First up, we have a treasured local celebrity that we all love who has fought for us and is the epitome of the example of what a legislator should be. And do we have Heather Scott is here? Yeah. Please welcome Heather.
This is the hardcore people that are left.
You're here with us.
You bet. I'll be with you till the end. And I'm going to continue to fight in Boise as long as you guys keep me there. I'm in. And it is a fight, as you know. And the one thing I want to start with is don't believe anything you read about me. Ever. So thank you for coming, but more than that, thank you for staying. Over the last 3 months, life's gone from fairly normal, pretty comfortable, a little bumpy at time, to pure turmoil, tyranny, and now we have anarchy. All over something we've never even heard about before, good old COVID. So for the record, I do not believe things are going to go back to normal anytime soon. We have been too complacent for too long, and we've let our government run amok. And it's full of rotten apples, even in Boise, with a Republican House and a Republican Senate and a Republican, well, maybe not so much governor. They're out of control. They're completely out of control. So I'm going to just touch on where we're at. Federal guidelines and draconian policies were issued in a top-down, orchestrated over-response and rapidly deployed across our nation and our state to compliant citizens with little resistance. Now, I think there was some resistance up here, but not across the state as a majority. We have been bludgeoned with new phrases such as flatten the curve, stay safe, stay home. What are you guys doing here? Essential versus non-essential, self-quarantine, and the worst of all, social distancing. Yeah, let's boo social distancing. People we never even knew of before are now household names like Fauci and CDC and the WHO. We've got it all figured out. And every death, no matter what the reasoning, it's COVID. It's all COVID. One common denominator to all those deaths, big money. Big money seems to be the common denominator. Social media and mainstream media have tried to silence any voice that shared any concerns with what's going on. How many people have been banned from Facebook in this room? Hey, Facebook, they wanted to keep the same narrative out there. Stay home, stay safe, be afraid, shun socialization, and follow the edicts of the government and get vaccinated. And that's the one I think we're going to start hearing soon, not only from our government and our businesses, but even from our churches now. That's what we're going to start hearing. Here in Idaho, Little Governor, Governor Little, he shut down the schools and he deemed the churches as non-essential. Many of the pastors around here were very compliant, and they ignored Hebrews 10:25 and quietly closed their doors. Yeah, that's a big boo. This is when citizens needed them the most. There's never been a time in history during a pandemic or some disaster that the churches have shut down for the people. And that should tell you, if your church is still shut down, it shouldn't be your church.
Preach it, sister!
So what's really sad for us in Idaho is our governor, he reached new levels of power grabbing and continued to press forward. And we always thought we were different in Idaho, right? We're just always different, but no. When federal money started pouring in, he invoked Do you got a better word than pouring?
You got a website?
It did pour in. And so he invoked Idaho Code 46601, the martial law part of code. I don't know if you guys know that, but it is his edicts have come under martial law, and that's why we, as a legislature, has had so much conflict on can we go back into session or not to address his overreach. Obviously, because he thought this was an extreme emergency. To my opinion, this extreme emergency has never happened. He has essentially repealed laws, issued 11 proclamations and 5 executive orders, and that was about a week ago, so I'm sure it's worse now. He's changed resolutions or regulations, and one of the worst things that he's done, and I don't know if you're aware of this, is he has set up groups of his cronies to distribute $1.2 billion of federal money in our state, all under the guise of stimulus. And I've sat in on a ton of governor calls, although most legislators don't sit in on them anymore. Once a week we have a daily, an update, a weekly update, and he basically barks out what he's doing and then asks if you have any questions about what he's doing. And we went from calls where 105 legislators were on that phone listening to now we barely get 30 legislators that even want to hear what he has to say. He's made his plans clear, and this is his quote: test, identify, isolate, contact tracing, and things will not be back to normal until we have a vaccination. That's his words. And then he's also staffed up another agency with $7 million to implement contact tracing and more invasive testing of citizens. We can. I get to that later in my speech. So, the saddest thing I saw from citizens all across the state and up here in North Idaho was fear. Whether it was fear of what the government was doing, fear of getting sick or dying, or the financial ruin they were facing with their businesses, people were, and they still are, fearful. Remember, fear is not of God, and we're not to fear anything in this world or of this world but God alone. So unfortunately, this fear has caused many Idahoans, probably maybe a majority of Idahoans, to simply just give up their freedoms by simply complying to unconstitutional edicts. So the question is, why is this happening in Idaho? Well, why is this happening? As Christians, we know this is a spiritual battle. And biometrics, nanotechnology, tracing, tracking, data collection, they all fit in nicely with the big book that we read. End times. In end times, if you're not a Christian, you might want to read Revelations, because in the end times, you won't be able to buy or sell without a mark. And then another thing happening in Idaho is we're getting this 5G, which will be great, right? Because that's real-time tracking, and that's going to fit in nicely. Who would have thought a book written thousands of years ago was so relevant now? Partisan issues, corrupt, power-hungry governments, elected officials, angry anti-Trumpers, and political parties are all easy tools for deep state and elite globalists to use as pawns to gain the data they need from our reactions as citizens. This helps them put in their totalitarian, top-down control of our country and our state. The bottom line is that there are evil people out there that hate our country. They hate our country, they hate our God, our people, our freedoms, and everything we stand for around the globe, and they want to destroy us. So I believe hard times are coming, and I know we all want things to go back to normal and just be normal again, but I think we're past that. I believe the following is very likely to occur. Many of our smaller businesses are going to go under. We're likely to see another health emergency in early fall, certainly before the November elections. There's going to be more government intrusion, mandatory testing, data sharing, vaccinations, and contact tracing surveillance by not only our phone apps, but by people and by businesses. I just got a report from the CDC. I thought the governor announced 7 million for contract tracing. I just found something on the CDC's actual site that said they put $65 million into Idaho alone for contact tracing. There's a big difference between 7 million and 65 million. And I haven't finished following that number on how they're going to implement it, but there's a 37-page report on the governor's site that's super, super detailed. And it's going to hit almost every aspect of our life. We're likely to see a more compliant population, the go along, get along, allowing this testing. And we're going to start looking like more and more the minority. Just like when TSA happened after 9/11, everyone just complied, and all of a sudden, all our rights are just thrown away. We're going to start seeing a greater dependence on government handouts. The government is teamed up with the farmers now. There's just so much going on. We're going to see more private-public partnerships, which are really crony capitalism. And I've heard the thing, higher taxes. I don't know that we're going to do it in this state, but they have to pay for this all. Ultimately, what we're going to see in Idaho is a loss of our state sovereignty. Many of the governors across the nation have taken this federal money, and there are strings attached. And the words I keep hearing, I've sat in on White House calls almost weekly, and then Idaho State calls almost weekly. And this is the same language. I've heard it from different agencies in the federal government, and I've heard it from our state. And they say more locally executed, state-managed, and federally supported scenarios and regulations. I'll just repeat it one more time. More locally executed, state-managed, and federally supported scenarios and regulations. That's their words. We're going to continue to see censoring online, and we're going to continually see civil unrest, and it seems like that's happened this past week. Things have just turned upside down. And then the food supply shortages. So what do we do about it?
Trees and ropes.
Oh, hey, you guys are such you guys are such a soft crowd compared to Bonner's Ferry. I mean, they had some really strong words. But that's good. Time may be short. We may want to give up or just hunker down. There's nowhere else to move. Everyone's moving here to Idaho. And we better fix it. Time's short, but we as Christians, we're called to be salt and light. And we're called to spread the truth and occupy till he comes. And there seems to be a lot of opportunities to be salt and light these days. And as things get darker, we're going to become brighter, and people are going to want to put that light out. And that's why we just got to encourage each other. I'm not giving up. I hope you won't either. I believe we got to fight with everything we have in us to protect our Constitution, rein in irresponsible government, and regain our country. I don't know if the country's gone. I'd like to think Idaho can be saved. If you're from Washington, there's still property for sale here. I don't know about you in Washington. Okay, so I want to leave you with some things I think that you can do as individuals, as communities, that maybe will help give you ideas if you don't have any. You're here today. I'm hoping you're encouraged by all these vendors and this great event. Yes, it's great. We have so many opportunities. Opportunities as individuals to turn off our TVs and open our Bibles. Get right with God. If you're not right with God, you're going to be like a boat without a rudder. Just get that done with so you don't have to worry about that. Downsize, simplify, and get out of debt. That's a hard one, but we got to do it. Become more self-reliant by putting in a small garden. You guys have opportunities now more than ever to pull your kids out of the government-run schools. Start homeschooling, teach them values, set up a private school at a church during the weeks. There's so many opportunities. Idaho is great for opportunities for homeschoolers, and there's, in my opinion, there's no other way to do it. You got opportunity right now to know who you've elected for office, who's the tyrants and who's not the tyrants. Learn who's in charge of your jurisdiction, who's making decisions for you, who's spending your money. Get out your tax paper when it comes in a couple of weeks and look at who you're paying, which districts, library districts, fire districts, school districts. All those people are collecting your money and doing something with it. And if it's not something you got to be involved in that. So here's an opportunity now to do it. Individually, wean yourself from smart-based electronics. That's really tough. Gotta do it. I found a new place for YouTube. It's called BitChute. You guys probably all knew about it. But BitChute, and there's all kinds of things out there, but we gotta get off of it, wean yourself from it. And then I think the biggest thing as an individual, what you can do is decide where your line in the sand is and why. You have to decide what you're going to allow for you and your family and where your line is, because you're going to be making some hard decisions. I had a guy stop at my booth earlier on, and he said, well, what's the state? What are we going to do with when they vaccinate? I work at the hospital. They're going to force me, or I'm going to lose my job. And bottom line is, you're going to have to draw some lines in the sand, and that's where we're headed. So we have opportunities as communities to build relationships and educate others on what the truth is right now. There's so many fearful people out there in our neighbors and our communities. We need to be light. We need to show them the path forward. So many are waking up right now. There is such an opportunity. People are scared and they're calling me, and I'm like, I'm government, you don't want to call me, you know? But ultimately they don't know where to turn. And so this is the time to reach out to people you might not like. Get to know your neighbors. Even if you don't like them, you may need them, and they might need you. And that's what we should be doing. You could host a civics or constitution class. You can do, to connect with your neighbors, do a community garage sale, sell all your stuff and downsize. Get out of debt. Network with others with skills. Share a skill with your community. If you know how to can something, I don't know how to canner, my husband is. If you know how to can green beans, teach them how to can green beans. So, do stuff that you can connect and teach people skills that might be really useful in the days ahead. And then I keep saying build a network. Bonners Ferry jumped right on this. They've got now these rapid response teams. So when you make one phone call and you have 20 people with guns show up at your door, you're going to feel pretty safe. We've got an out-of-control government. I know in my county I've got a sheriff that will escort, you know where I'm going, they will escort the contact tracers off of your property. We've got county commissioners that passed resolutions that said we will deny this unconstitutional edict from an out-of-control little governor. So, you need to have people to show up, to stand up, and to speak up when the government is irresponsible and out of control. A couple other things as a community: host a barter, trade, garage sale event, and once we get all our lives in order, personally, and with our communities, then we will be a united force politically. And there's so many tyrants that we've identified. We have opportunities as a group and as a community to push back on a lot of injustices. Opportunity to change the direction of our government to reflect our values and work bottom up instead of this top down stuff we're seeing, and clean up our state. You know, people think it's not a big deal, but every position in government needs people, citizens watching. You look at the library commissions and you think, oh, who wants to go to a library meeting? But those library commissioners are making decisions on what books your children are reading. And even the Idaho legislator, we found books in the Common Core that fit our pornography definitions for Idaho, and they're in the schools being taught through the Common Core. So every position, I mean, if you build up as a community, one person can go to one meeting. These are maybe once a month, and you can have some accountabilities. And then we have opportunities to work together to identify the tyrants and remove them, like Governor Brad Little, and any others that ignore the jurisdictional boundaries and carry out unconstitutional edicts across their counties. Currently, I don't know if you saw the table, and I think they're still there, there's a recall being organized against the governor. And citizens need to be exposing these people. There's legal ways to do this within our system still. So, as we've seen it, in conclusion, life can change overnight, as we've seen. And the founders of this country, they gave their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for this country to even be formed. How many people are in the service or have served in the military? Thank you. These guys have sacrificed greatly for what we have to be able to speak and do what we want. My question to you tonight is, where is your line in the sand? How much is enough? And when will you decide it's your time to do your part in this republic that we've been given, we've been blessed with? Only you are going to make that decision. Only you can make it. No one can make it for you. And I hope I just hope you're bold enough to stand up when you need to. And I just pray for our state. I think we're coming on hard times, and I hope you'll join me with the adventure and the journey to try to push back in this state and get it back to where it needs to be. So thank you, North Idaho, and thanks for sticking it out tonight.